Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Ever had a boss so bad they made doing nothing feel like a full-time job? Today's story takes us back to a summer gig from hell where two fresh out of high school guys landed what sounded like an easy window washing job until their penny-pinching boss lost his mind over insurance technicalities. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Boss says we can't drive the work truck, so we don't. The title pretty much sums it up, but a long time ago in a city not far away, I had a terrible summer job. Right after high school, my friend and I were looking for practically anything to make money, and his older brother told us about a job he once had working for this guy washing windows. Now, this guy owns what appears to be a semi-legitimate business. He has a full shop/garage where he stores cleaning products, big fancy tubs that use sonic waves to wash blinds, and a new, at the time, work truck. He's also a hardcore penny pincher and buys the cheapest, crappiest insurance he can on the truck. Initially, when we got hired on, he would meet us at the shop at 7 a.m., give us the work orders, and ride out with us for on-the-job training. After a couple of weeks, he would just leave the work orders in his office and then leave us to our own devices. Now, I want to preface this with, we weren't lazy. We got paid hourly, like $9 an hour, but we commissioned based on the number of individual windows we cleaned in a day, plus how many windows required a ladder. Those paid an extra 50 cents each. So if we knocked out 3 to 4 jobs in one day, we could take home approximately $14 to $15 an hour. Another important fact is that this was right after high school, so we were both 18, and for whatever reason, the boss didn't bother to ask or check our hiring paperwork to confirm this. Well, after a month or so, he finds out how old we are and has a come apart. Turns out his insurance on his truck has a clause that anyone driving has to be at least 25 years old with a clean driving record. No DUIs or anything like that, or his monthly payment triples. So he makes it very clear to us that we are not to drive the truck, and if he finds out we're doing it anyway, he'll fire us and dock any bonus pay from our final checks. Legally, he can do that because it's bonus, not hourly. I need to drive home the fact that he was so GD delusional that he never paid attention to anything. So one day we come into the shop and see a stack of about 15 jobs. However, he didn't schedule anyone else. He actually scheduled himself because he expected the shop to just run itself, except for the two of us that day. He liked to micromanage, but simultaneously never picked up his phone if we called him. So despite calling him numerous times to let him know we can't do anything, we end up just sitting in the shop and listening to the radio for most of the day. This was also only a year or two after smartphones came out, so things like streaming music or movies or playing games on your phone was essentially non-existent, unless you had a spare $1,000 lying around to buy the fancy new iPhone 2. Fast forward about 5 hours, and he calls one of us to ask how things are going, how many jobs we'd finished, and if we needed help to get any completed. We explained that we'd been sitting in the shop all day waiting for him to come in so we could get started. Well, at this point, he goes effing ballistic and starts just tearing us up one side and down the other about wasting his time and money and blah, blah, blah. Why didn't you call me? Who else is there? Has anyone finished any of the jobs? Needless to say, that was our last day there. But we threatened to report him if he didn't pay us for the time we sat in the shop that day. So we still got paid almost a full day's wages. And from what I heard, within a year or so later, his shop folded, so win-win, I guess. This was a value determination. He thought of how much he would have to spend on insurance if, for example, he said, all right, triple my insurance rate, and didn't understand that it would be an investment in how much he could make by keeping you as drivers. He could have paid and had a business, but he didn't, so he lost it. And our second story. You said drop everything, so I did. This happened over 18 years ago, but I remember it like yesterday. I'd worked for a law firm in a clerical role for about 3 years. Though not a lawyer, I ended up doing a lot of work that lawyers normally handled, but not for lawyer pay. Anyway, I'd landed my dream job in another field. More interesting, better hours, better benefits, double the pay. I hit the jackpot. And it was on my second from last day at the law firm, having respectfully given and honored my 2 weeks' notice. As it happened, I needed to take an extended lunch break one day to handle some business related to my pending new job. I arranged it ahead of time and even came in 2 hours early to make sure all my work was completed on time. Damn, I was too conscientious. Anyway, my lunch business took me longer than expected, and I returned about an hour later than planned. No big deal, right? I had very little left to do and only 2 more days at that job anyway. Nope, the HR manager found me as I got to my desk, called me to her office, and fired me on the spot. I managed not to smile and thank her because I was thrilled to have an extra couple of days off before heading to my new position. I had a little spring in my step as I walked to my desk to pack up my stuff. I can neither confirm nor deny that I was whistling a happy tune. In truth, there was only one thing I still had needed to do on my final 2 days. Though not a lawyer, I essentially took care of all the estate planning clients, wills, advanced medical directives, and such. I take all the info from the clients, generate all the forms, check for compliance with all the laws, and hand it to the attorney. He'd skim it, sign it, and bill his hourly rate for the hours I worked. It was a cash cow for the firm because I made next to nothing. Anyway, though, I was just good at the work. The files were rather a mess. Let's just say my system worked for me, but it was eclectic. As I was packing my desk, I left them piled in a box on the floor. Moments before I was preparing to walk out of there for the last time, the young attorney, yes, attorney, who'd been assigned to take over that part of my work, came up to my desk. He said, "HR manager told me to come find you and have you show me the estate planning files. She said you'd show me what I need to do." I had the incredible pleasure of being able to look at him and say, with the most sincere and innocent tone, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." Then I pointed at the pile of files and suggested HR manager would have to help him. Then I picked up my box of personal effects and walked away. And just as sweet as could be, poked my head into the HR manager's office on my way out to assure her that there were no hard feelings and to let her know young attorney was probably going to be looking for her. I love how she was expecting you to keep essentially working after she fired you on the spot. LMFAO. Seems like it's a case of not my effing problem. And our next story. Apparently, I work at the bookstore now. This happened to me earlier today and got a good laugh out of me, so I thought I'd share it here. I work in retail at a mall in my area, and I wanted to see if I could find a particular book while I went on my last 15-minute break, so I decided I'd scoot on over to the bookstore to see if they had the book I was looking for. It's very specific in a very niche section, so I wasn't going to push my luck, but I thought I'd check regardless. I grabbed my wallet and phone from the break room at my store and walked on over to the bookstore. I found an employee stocking shelves. I told her what I was looking for, and she raised an eyebrow at me, then asked me if a customer asked me to look for this book. I got confused, and in my tired stupor, I just said no. So she waved me over to the counter in the center of the store and told me she was going to show me how to look it up in the system. I thought this whole thing was strange, but my brain was pretty foggy from minimal sleep and working all day, so I just followed her while she looked up the book on her computer. She told me that they had it only online and she could order it and I'd get my 40% off discount in addition. At this point, it clicked in my mind, she thought I worked here. So I asked her and she told me yes, looking increasingly more confused. I laughed and told her no, that I was on my break from another store down the mall. She laughed as well. I still had my headset on. I didn't bother taking it off for my break, and she told me this bookstore just hired a bunch of new people, so she thought I was a new employee. We laughed together for a bit and chatted about working in the mall and how tired we both were. It was a small but lovely interaction that brightened my day. I love that it escalated into a full-on, let me train you on our system moment before either of you realized what was happening. And our last story. Back in '75, a Karen tried to steal land from my grandma. Here's what happened. This one goes way back to 1975. My grandmother lived in a nice little house on a quiet street tucked away from the hustle and bustle of city life. She'd been there for decades, always minding her own business and keeping to herself. The neighborhood was peaceful, with friendly neighbors who respected each other's boundaries. That was until Karen moved in next door. Now, Karen wasn't just your run-of-the-mill difficult neighbor. She was the kind of person who thought the world owed her everything, and she made sure everyone around her knew it. The moment she moved into the house next door, things started going south. She immediately began tearing down the old fence that separated her property from my grandmother's. No warning, no notice, just started ripping it out. She didn't stop there. In the middle of the destruction, she decided to move the fence 3 feet onto my grandmother's property. Yeah, she just decided that 3 feet of land was now hers, as if the fence itself wasn't bad enough. The audacity of just taking that extra space was mind-boggling. My grandmother, being the sweet, quiet woman she was, didn't want to cause trouble, so she walked over to Karen's and asked politely if she could move the fence back to its rightful place. All Grandma wanted was for Karen to respect her property and not steal that little bit of land, but Karen didn't give a damn about any of that. She responded by telling my 85-year-old grandmother to F off, literally, and she didn't stop there. She let a string of curse words fly, declaring that the property was now hers, as though she had some divine right to it. Of course, my dad wasn't having any of this. He'd always been the protective type, and the last thing he was going to let slide was some psycho neighbor running roughshod over his mother. He went straight over to Grandma's house to confront Karen. He asked her nicely, or maybe not so nicely, to move the fence back. Karen, still as obnoxious as ever, told my dad to F off too. Now, here's where things took a turn. My dad was a man who didn't back down, he didn't scare easily, he had a certain reputation, one that told people you did not mess with him. So instead of getting into a shouting match with Karen, he did what any smart man would do. He hired a surveyor to confirm the property lines. The surveyor came out, measured everything, and confirmed what we already knew. The fence was on my grandmother's land. But instead of just complaining, my dad decided to take it a step further. He hired a contractor to tear down that fence. The work was done quickly and efficiently, and the property line was restored to its rightful place. But of course, Karen wasn't about to let that go. She called the police, trying to get my dad in trouble. When the officers arrived, my dad, wearing a devilish grin, showed them the survey results. The police, after reviewing everything, told Karen she needed to F off. Not literally, of course, but they made it clear she was in the wrong. They basically told her to get lost or face legal consequences. But my dad didn't stop there. No, he wasn't going to let Karen get away with her disrespect. He filed a lawsuit for the cost of the survey, the fence removal, and the travel expenses, since he had to drive 300 miles to deal with this nonsense. The whole ordeal was a big hassle, but it was one my dad was more than willing to take on. And in the end, it paid off. He won the lawsuit, getting back every penny he spent, and then some. As for Karen, well, after losing the case, she became even more of a pariah in the neighborhood. Nobody wanted to deal with her. She eventually moved away, and good riddance to her. It's been years now, but we still talk about that time. My dad taught me a valuable lesson that day. Sometimes you don't just sit back and let people walk all over you. You stand up for what's right, no matter how much it costs. And if they refuse to back down, then you take them to court and win. Your dad's the kind of guy who doesn't just talk tough, but acts with precision and legal ruthlessness. A lot of people would have stopped at the fence, but not your dad, no sir. Karen thought she was going to steal 3 feet of land. Instead, she wrote your dad a check. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.